Hi, I'm Jim Christian, founder and CEO of Cornerstone, and this is Behind the Barricade, where we unpack performance breakthroughs in construction and project delivery. If you care about fewer surprises, stronger schedules, and projects that open when they're supposed to, you're in the right place. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce Rachel Zsembery, President and CEO of Bergmeyer. Rachel and I go back a ways, and our firms have partnered together over the years. Bergmeyer is a design collaborative. Architects, interior designers, graphic designers, and brand strategists under one roof, built to reduce handoff friction and design beyond the four walls. Rachel's an architect by training and has 23 years at Bergmeyer, has deep experience in consumer and brand environments, especially retail. She lives at the intersection I love, strategic intent and tactical execution. In this episode, Rachel takes us behind the scenes of a monster project for Dick's Sporting Goods, House of Sport, Boston. It's a brand first urban store of sports flagship, spanning 2 floors and roughly 100,000 square feet, an entire city block on Boylston Street. Yes, the finish line of the Boston Marathon. The site, a layered 1960s structure formerly occupied by Lord and Taylor, sitting in an overlay district with intense visibility, complex agency approvals, and big structural and infrastructure upgrades. Here's why you want to lean in. The team locked a non-negotiable opening date, the Boston Marathon of 2024. The date wasn't moving. To make it real, Rachel's team invested heavily up front, a full year of pre-construction, documentation, cost analysis, landlord work letter alignment, and early alignment with engineering, specialty consultants, the general contractor, and the owner's project management team. They built the escalation paths before demo started, but when field surprises hit, water damage, seismic updates, reskinning the facade of one of the Boston's busiest streets with the minimal barricade depth, the playbook was already in place. That discipline is what protected the construction timeline. We also get into the makings of a project that soar, the ones that stumble. Rachel is blunt. 9 times out of 10, stumbles start when the relationships are adversarial from the start. Refine mutual success early. Tell the truth about timelines and have the courage to say no when the front end is so compressed the project is going to fail. That honesty wins you the next project. There's a killer segment on documentation too. Rachel calls out over documentation, bloated sets that slow everything down, create conflicts, and inflate perceived complexity. Her fix, clear standards for the right level of detail by phase and drawing type, with architects, engineers, vendors, contractors, project managers, and the client at the same table to align. Less noise, more signal, faster reviews, tighter execution. Trends and tension points. We covered those as well. Shifting tariffs, that whiplash estimates, and supply choices. The industry's declining time on site, and why face-to-face field walks solve problems faster. And maybe the biggest unlock, bringing the construction team in early. If design build keeps your builders in the tactical box, you'll leave innovation and speed on the table. Early teaming is how you handle one certainty in every project, the uncertainty. It's a candid, practical conversation with a leader who's delivered flagship outcomes in one of the hardest urban environments you can pick. I'm Jim Christian. This is Behind the Barricade, brought to you by Cornerstone, where we're committed to creating a better journey for our clients, staff, project partners, and ultimately the world. Now, into the episode. Hi, it's Jim Christian, president and founder of Cornerstone. Welcome to Behind the Barricades, where we're exploring performance in the construction industry and what
ways to improve it. So welcome. I'm so thrilled to have Rachel Zsembery with me today, who is the president and CEO of Bergmeyer. Rachel and I go back a ways, but over the years, our firms have done work together, and it's been just a great relationship. We love working with Bergmeyer and Rachel's team there. So Rachel, thank you so much for coming to the podcast today, and look forward to you telling us a bit about your journey, how you got to where you are at Bergmeyer, and what's happening in your world these days.
Great. Thank you so much, Jim. I really appreciate you joining me, and I'm very much looking forward to this chat today as well. Really appreciate our partnership over the years and excited to discuss the future of the construction and project delivery process and what we're seeing in that market. My background is as an architect, practiced across a wide range of the many different markets that we support here at Bergmeyer. However, from fairly early on in my career, I've specialized in consumer and branded environments, especially in the retail space. I've loved the opportunity to feel like I'm sparking joy in spaces that people both need to and choose to go to every day. And I've been fortunate enough to grow my career at Bergmeyer for the past 23 years. Oh. So yeah, it's been quite a journey from joining really in my early career to my position today. And to see the way that Bergmeyer's transitioned and to be a part of that evolution over a number of years. So just as background, Bergmeyer is a design collaborative, which is a holistic practice of architects, interior designers, graphic designers, and brand strategists. We're all focused on the future of design and the impact on the communities we serve. And, for me as an architect who's always enjoyed practicing in what I like to call the architecture and space, so beyond the traditional four walls that we put ourselves in as a box as an architect, really looking at a holistic approach to design. And I think much of what I know are focused on in this podcast, which is how can we decrease the friction in the project delivery process. And we do so internally by trying to field a comprehensive team from day one. So, it eliminates information and data from being lost during the handoff between teams at different phases in the project. And, that's been my focus as an architect. I've always been deeply involved in our practice, from managing retail store prototype development to our large national account programs for brands. But that balance between the strategic and the tactical is a really interesting space, and it's something I'm excited to chat more with you about.
Amazing. I'm counting down the days for your 25th anniversary party. That'll be amazing.
We love celebrating milestones here, so yeah, I'm looking forward to every new year.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, really excited. We were chatting before we hit record about the project that you wanted to share with us, where you felt you had experienced a performance breakthrough. So looking forward to hearing more about that. Would you like to share that story?
Absolutely. When we chatted before the podcast around where we recently seen performance breakthroughs, one of the projects that really came to mind was our recent project with Dick's Sporting Goods, specifically their House of Sport in Boston, which was their first ever urban House of Sport flagship store. And it's really it's been a turning point for Dick's Sporting Goods as a brand, and a unique and special project. We've worked with them on several other projects, but this one I think had some really unique constraints and opportunities that as a team, I think we were all able to tackle together. I think what's really interesting about Dick's Sporting Goods as a retailer is that they're one of the fastest growing retail brands, not because they are reducing their footprint like so many, but because they're in the process of growing it and really investing in an expansion of their assortment and adding experiences into their space, really seeing a lot of success flying counter to what a lot of folks are doing today. We really enjoyed partnering with them to rethink everything from their retail flow and assortment to their, how to adapt their signature facade in an urban environment, and how to open up the design to more types of guests than they typically serve. Tourists, for example, or a new guest typology when you're in this type of an urban environment. So I think for us, the takeaway from this project, and one that we've brought with them into every project beyond this is the significant pre-construction investment and the development of the full team, from design and engineering to specialty consultants to the construction team, owners project management, everybody from really the very, very early stages. And I think that that was to deal with a couple of different really important issues that, had we not dealt with early on, would not have led to the success further on down the road. So all of the different agency approvals, we were in an overlay district as well here in Boston. This was a 60s era building that required structural and infrastructure investments. It's an entire city block in Boston's Back Bay on Boylston Street, which is one of the retail mecca epicenters of Boston. So it had remarkable visibility, both from a sighting standpoint, but also to all of the city officials.
Wow.
And it literally is at the finish line of the Boston Marathon. So, it's a unique opportunity and also a very difficult project. So this had been a Lord & Taylor department store for decades, and it was very difficult to survey, actually. So because it had been added to and adapted over time, we were fortunate to have been involved in a few of those adaptations, so we had some insider knowledge to bring in with us. That pre-construction investment, addressing all of those items I just mentioned, they allowed the project to flow much more smoothly during construction. And I won't say that there weren't challenges and unexpected conditions as we were pulling apart this building. We found water damage. We, through working with the city, recognized that we needed to make seismic updates. But because we'd worked together so closely from early on, and we'd addressed so many of these potential pitfalls early on, we started with a process in place to address issues as they came. And that helped us really get to our opening date. So while this was a significant project that had, a multi-year timeline, that timeline becomes compressed very quickly when you start taking in all of the agency approvals and the back and forth with city officials. So our construction time period started to get, the target for the opening date was the 2024 Boston Marathon, and that date wasn't moving.
That's not moving.
It really did take us developing a strong relationship together so that when items came up in the field, we had already a shorthand, a process, an escalation process identified early on that we could then adapt to anything that came along throughout the project.
Amazing. I'm just peppered with questions that I want to ask.
Sure.
So give us you said a full city block. So how many square feet of retail did you have there approximately?
So this was a very significant project in terms of its size and scale. So it was 2 floors, and this was a larger square footage project than their typical House of Sport project.
Cool. And when you look at the overall timeline, how many months or years did you have, and how much time did you spend in pre-construction versus construction approximately?
Yeah, so I would say that pre-construction, which really ran into the documentation period, we probably spent a good year between pre-construction documentation approvals, and then it was probably another full year that we were in various stages of demolition through stabilization through construction process. It was a very long project, but for 100,000 square feet, again in a project that had a very, very tight constraints in terms of, again, this being one of the busiest streets in Boston. We were reskinning the entire building. So there was, again, stabilization and being able to identify how, without being able to really erect a significant depth barricade in order to be able to do that work. The contractor had a lot of site constraints that they needed to prepare for and deal with, in addition to the complexities of the building itself.
That's amazing. Well, another good reason for me to get to Boston sooner than later. I missed seeing it the last time I was in town.
Yes, we'll have to tour you through. We'd love to.
Yeah, I'd love to. It sounds so cool. So if you think about 1-to-1, a year in pre-construction, getting everything done, the permits in place, all the approvals in place, and a year of demolition, stabilization, construction. Would you say that that should be a lens that we all kind of start to look through as an overall milestone kind of approach if we're talking to an owner prior to them just starting to kick some tires, that they should kind of have in their mind a 1-to-1 ratio for all of that? Or what would your wisdom be on that?
That's a great question. I think that this was this construction, the full timeline was much longer than it would be on a typical project, because I included within that, there was some shell delivery construction process work that the landlord was undertaking, which may have run concurrently with some of our pre-construction processes. I think every project is unique, but yes, I think that the pre-construction development, the more time that you take upfront to really understand and uncover the potential challenges that you're going to face further down the road, to really dig into code analysis, especially for clients, to invest in your design team, preparing a full code analysis before you even sign a lease. There is a lot of value to that, which I think sometimes is shortchanged. And we were fortunate that we were involved early enough in this process that we could review and provide feedback for the landlord work letter and the project delivery conditions for the building, because that made a big difference when we were planning for the construction time period as well. Really understanding what is being delivered, what's not, more importantly, what's not being delivered, and making sure that there's alignment, and that any of those gray areas are addressed early on is critical. And there are always gray areas in a lease document.
I find it's the area that we often sacrifice the most on is pre-construction. It just becomes an area, we can cut a bit of time here or a bit of time there. And it really, we always pay the price at the end, I feel.
Always.
You'd think we'd learn the lesson, but anyways, I love the encouragement to focus on it. That's great. When you think of projects, what works, what doesn't, do you have any insights, Rachel, that you'd like to share? Like, when this condition is happening, the project can get off the rails quickly, or if this condition is relevant or prevalent, the project can stay on track. What's kind of your wisdom on the do's and don'ts, if you want to call it that?
So let's see. I think for every project that stumbles at some point, 9 times out of 10, it's because the relationships were set up as adversarial from the get-go. And when you start a project, instead, through identifying what mutual success looks like, you enter the relationship in a partnering mindset. And going back to what we just talked about regarding timelines, I think that includes the ability to have those frank discussions around timelines. Just using my own experience, we've actually declined opportunities that were so far condensed on the front end of project development that we knew the project was not set up for success.
Wow.
And often in those situations, we've provided our analysis and recommendation, and we always look to start a dialogue to find those opportunities to phase a project through concurrent work streams or some other way to move a project forward. But what we've found is that even when we have to decline a project, after counseling our potential client on the potential challenges with the timeline, they more often than not will come back to us on future projects, letting us know that they really appreciated our candor and our analysis. And, it typically is not gone unrealized. I think my takeaway from that always is it's always possible to say yes, to find someone who will say yes. But my colleague and our chief strategy officer at Bergmeyer, Christian Davies, he's often said, when you think you can bend the rules of time and space, everybody loses. And so the earlier in a project you open up a dialogue around timelines, hopefully with all parties at the table, the more effective the project will be. And we know that during project construction, timelines are going to be condensed, but you can't squeeze the front end or the back end of the project if you don't have everybody at the table who is able to be confidently say, yes, I can deliver what I'm being asked of in that project. If somebody feels like they are being put in a position that is untenable, it's not going to be a successful project. You can't have one cog in the wheel shorter than the others and expect that the wheel is going to continue to turn smoothly.
I love that. You can't have one cog in the wheel short. I love that. That's awesome. I love that analogy. I might use that.
Absolutely.
So what happens when you say no? How much courage does that take to tell an owner that who you want to do work for, that you've spent probably invested time to be at the table, but how much courage does it take to say no to that owner when the time is to say no?
Right.
How do you manage that with
Right.
you and your team?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that we feel deeply, even more than being concerned about setting ourselves up for success, we would never feel comfortable setting an owner or a client up for anything but success as well. Giving somebody false hope that something is achievable when you know what can be achieved and what can't be achieved, especially if they're newer to the process, or they have a special project that, perhaps you have experience with that they do not. Just saying yes is, to your point, that's not a courageous position. That's not an empathetic position. It's not kind. So, I think that our ethos around using business as a force for good means, being a good partner.
Right.
And when we have taken the time to identify alternatives, there are always opportunities to innovatively look at the project delivery process to create synergies and opportunities for improvement. If you are able to get to identifying a pathway that looks like mutual success, then you can enter a project in a partnering mindset. If you look like that is not on the table, then it makes it very easy to say no.
I love those insights. It's it really, especially the insight that it's not about your success, it's about the project success. And if you want the client ultimately to be successful in whatever their endeavor is. So that's great. So Rachel, what are you watching in trends right now in the industry? What are you paying attention to? What are you thinking, I need to spend more time, or my team needs to spend more time thinking about this or that? What are you seeing that you think the industry needs to be paying attention to?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are a lot of different areas that we're keeping our eyes on. Obviously, timelines, project cost estimating, and the way that that's challenged right now with the shifting of tariffs. We are, looking at, the trends that we're seeing of decreasing time spent on site together, which we think is very challenging. When all else fails, to me, there's nothing better than meeting face to face and putting all of these experts together physically to look at a field condition and use their collective expertise, so that they're not innovating in a vacuum. But I think the one that we're spending a little bit more time really looking at, as well as this trend towards what I would call over documentation, which creates some challenges. When something goes wrong on site, especially in a program where perhaps you have a multi-location program that you're delivering on, something that goes wrong on one location can lead to a reaction of, let's identify how to fix that 12 different places in our drawings.
Right.
That can lead to a whole other set of challenges that arise, from coordination and consistency. Anytime you have documentation that appears more than one place in a set of drawings, you open yourself up to conflicting information or version control. You can miss key design intent by having, unnecessary or redundant notes. It increases time and cost for your design team and your contractor team, which can lead to escalated costs from them overestimating the complexity of a project. There's excessive coordination time in response to RFIs. Even on the review and approval side, internally within the design teams, quality control, client reviews, even permitting reviews, when you become so bloated in terms of over documentation, it just slows down the whole system. So we're really focused on developing clear documentation standards and working together with contractors, vendors, owners, other architects sometimes, if we're the prototype standards management team. We bring all of the architects for our client, all of the engineers, again, vendors, contractors, project managers, the client themselves to the table. And we really work on defining the level of detail by project phase and by drawing type so that we're not over or under documenting our sets of drawings. And we really feel that sets everybody up for success. It gives everybody a seat at the table to provide feedback on opportunities for improvement and lessons learned. And again, it puts everybody in the mindset of we're working as a collaborative team to together lift the overall outcome and the experience for all of us. So I think, again, having the appropriate level of documentation addresses everything from timelines to quality to your effectiveness working as a team.
I think that's a great insight. I love your term bloated. It can get so bloated, which means it's slow and cumbersome. And, that's a great insight. Was there any other issue that you would like to kind of open our minds to think about in performance? Is there any other area that you say, if we could, as an industry, if we could focus collaboratively as owners, architects, engineers, owners, reps, contractors, suppliers, would there be one issue, or is there an issue or two that you'd say, boy, if we could fix this or work on fixing this, that it could have big improvement? Because my research has been performance in construction is stagnant and has been for a long time. Very, very, like when you think of how other industries, their performance has excelled, our industry has just kind of been flat. Just interested to know if you've got any other gems that you would like to share for us to focus on.
Yeah, I think there's nothing more certain than at some point during construction, you will face uncertainty, right? So I think that to your point around the construction process being stagnant, I think that is because of what I see is still an unwillingness to bring the construction team on early in a project. Again, we started talking together this, about this marriage between the strategic and the tactical. And I think when you put your construction team in the box of being tactical and you don't take their often very thoughtful strategic perspective into account early on, you don't provide that opportunity for innovation. Right. And so the investment in the groundwork of setting all of these parties, including and especially identifying the construction team together from very early on to create a relationship that will allow you to address uncertainty throughout the life of the project, that's to me often the determinant of success. And it's one of the hardest. We advocate for early identification of construction team members on virtually every single project that we engage in, but the design bid build process is so ingrained that it can be very difficult to achieve that goal. I do really believe though that investment and that putting the stake in the ground of creating a strong relationship is a key determinant to the success and innovation on construction projects.
I'm with you on that one, Rachel. I couldn't have said it better myself. So thanks for that wisdom. If people wanted to connect with you, what's the best way for them to connect with you? Is it through LinkedIn, or what? How should people connect with you if they have an interest in doing so?
Sure. LinkedIn is always a great way to connect. I love seeing what all of my colleagues in the building industry are up to. It's certainly a great platform, or directly through hello@bergmeyer.com. cornerstone.com. We love when folks reach out to us and want to engage in topics just like we discussed today.
It's awesome. Well, thanks so much, Rachel, for being on the podcast today. Really enjoyed our conversation. Look forward to many more to come. Thank you for all that are listening and viewing at Cornerstone. We're dedicated to creating a better journey for our clients, our staff, our project partners, and ultimately the world. We see this podcast as a way of making the world a better place in construction. So thank you, Rachel, and thank you for watching.
Thank you, Jim.